Turner here with the Coin Studio. Welcome back to another episode where we explore Australia's most rare and valuable coins. In today's video, we'll be counting down the top 10 most valuable Australian pennies ever minted, from the reign of King George V all the way through to Queen Elizabeth II. We'll uncover their history, unique varieties, and what makes each one so collectible. Before we get started, make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming releases. Stick around until the end to find out which Australian penny takes the #1 spot as the most valuable of all time. Alright, let's jump straight into it and start the countdown. These are the top 10 most valuable Australian pennies. Let us begin our list with the 10th place entry, the 1947 King George Sisket penny, specifically the highly sought-after Dot variety. The 1947 issue was produced with a total mintage of approximately 490,000 coins, a moderate figure by Australian standards. Within this mintage exists a subtle but important variety distinguished by the presence of a small dot positioned beside the letter Y in the word penny on the coin's reverse. To accurately identify this variety, one must closely inspect the area to the bottom right of the eye, as if a small raised dot is visible in this position. You are likely looking at the Y dot variety as a scarce and collectible error that can significantly elevate the coin's value. In terms of market valuation, the 1947 Y dot penny exhibits a considerable price range, depending on condition and preservation. Specimens in heavily circulated or worn condition generally realize values between 5 and 20 Australian dollars, depending on the level of wear and the specific demand among collectors at the time of sale. However, coins preserved in higher grades command substantially greater premiums. A well-struck example graded Mint State 60 MS60 can achieve prices around 200 Australian dollars, while coins that reach Mint State 65 MS65, a near-flawless condition displaying full mint, luster, and minimal contact marks, have been known to sell for as much as 1,800 Australian dollars, making it one of the most desirable mid-century Australian pennies in the collector's market. This combination of historical intrigue, moderate mintage, and subtle variety makes the 1947 Dot penny a captivating starting point in our countdown. It is a coin that rewards keen observation and patient searching, and one that often slips unnoticed through the hands of casual collectors unaware of the significance of that small but valuable dot. The presence of such varieties underscores the complexity and depth of Australian numismatics, where even the smallest design anomaly can transform an ordinary coin into an exceptional find. As we move forward through this list, we will encounter increasingly rare and historically meaningful issues, coins that not only represent monetary value but also tell the evolving story of a nation's economic identity, artistic expression, and colonial heritage. Each entry reveals a different chapter in the legacy of the Australian penny. From early 20th century designs steeped in imperial symbolism to later issues that reflect a distinctly Australian character, together they form a vivid portrait of a coin that has transcended its humble face value to become a treasured artifact of the country's cultural and economic evolution. Next up, coming in at number 9 on our list of the most valuable Australian pennies of all time is the 1940 King George VI penny, specifically the elusive and highly collectible KG variety. This particular issue represents a fascinating chapter in Australian numismatic history, a coin that at first glance may appear unremarkable to the casual observer, yet conceals within its design a subtle variation that distinguishes it from millions of others struck during the same year. The 1940 Australian penny was produced at a time when the world was gripped by the turmoil of the Second World War. Australia's economy, industries, and minting operations were all affected by the global conflict. The mintage of this year's penny totaled approximately 114,000 pieces, a relatively modest figure compared to other years in the series. Among these, however, lies a scarce and intriguing variety known as the KG Dot or KG variety, which continues to attract the attention of serious collectors and historians alike. To understand the significance of this variety, it's important to first recognize the initials themselves. On the reverse side of the coin, near the lower right-hand portion of the design, roughly midway along the right border of the field, you'll notice the tiny letters KG. These initials are the signature mark of George Kruger Gray, the esteemed British artist and coin designer responsible for many of the most enduring and elegant motifs on Commonwealth coinage during the early to mid-20th century. Kruger Gray's initials appear on several Australian coin designs of the period, serving as both an artistic hallmark and a symbol of the intricate craftsmanship involved in the minting process. In the standard version of the 1940 penny, the K and G appear plainly side by side. However, in the rare KG dot variety, a minute-raised dot can be observed precisely positioned between the two letters. This dot, a seemingly insignificant feature, likely resulted from a subtle die modification or a localized minting variation during production. Yet, as is often the case in numismatics, such small deviations can dramatically alter a coin's desirability and value. Identifying this variety requires careful examination under good lighting or magnification. To check your own 1940 penny, turn it to the reverse side, the kangaroo design face, and focus your attention near the middle of the right rim, just inside the beaded border. Locate the initials KG and then look closely between them. If you can discern a small, distinct dot centered between the two letters, you may very well be holding a 1940 KG dot penny, one of the more sought-after rarities from the King George VI era. In terms of market value, this coin exhibits an impressive range depending on condition, eye appeal, and grading. Well-worn or heavily circulated. Examples: coins that may have passed through countless hands in the mid-20th century can still attract respectable prices, often fetching between 10 and 20 Australian dollars, and in some cases higher if the coin retains decent detail or if collector demand is particularly strong. Coins that fall within the mid-range of the Sheldon grading scale, perhaps in fine to extremely fine condition, can bring in considerably more, sometimes climbing into the low hundreds depending on the overall quality of strike and surface preservation. However, where this variety truly shines is in mint state condition. High-grade examples graded at mint state 60 MS60 have been recorded selling for around 500 Australian dollars, demonstrating the coin's strong desirability among serious collectors. At the upper end of the scale, exceptional specimens that achieve mint state 65 MS65, coins displaying full mint luster, crisp definition, and virtually no contact marks, can command prices as high as $2,500, or potentially even more depending on current market trends and auction performance. The allure of the 1940 KG variety lies not only in its rarity but also in its connection to the artistry and precision of early 20th century coin production. Variations like these remind us that every coin carries a story of the engraver's hand, the machinery of the mint, and the historical context in which it was produced. The appearance of a tiny dot between two initials might seem trivial, yet it captures the imagination of collectors, who understand that such details are what transform an ordinary piece of copper into an extraordinary historical artifact. Furthermore, the 1940 issue represents a period of transition in Australian coinage, a time when wartime metal shortages and production constraints led to subtle variations, die wear, and design anomalies. For numismatists, each of these anomalies provides a window into the conditions of the era, offering tangible connections to Australia's wartime economy and the craftsmanship of its mints. In summary, the 1940 King George VI penny with the KG dot variety is a remarkable find, a coin that combines historical significance, artistic distinction, and scarcity into one elegant piece of numismatic history. Whether discovered in a family collection, acquired through diligent searching, or found tucked away in an old coin jar, this variety remains one of the most rewarding and visually intriguing discoveries an Australian coin collector can make. Next up, at number 8 on our list of the most valuable Australian pennies of all time, we turn our attention to a post-war issue that has intrigued collectors for decades. The 1948 King George II penny, featuring the elusive Y-Dot variety. This coin, though seemingly ordinary at first glance, represents one of the more fascinating examples of die variation in the later years of Australian pre-decimal coinage. Subtle, scarce, and highly prized by specialists, the 1948 Y-Dot penny stands as a perfect reminder that even in a period of high production and modern minting efficiency, small anomalies can yield great numismatic treasures. The year 1948 marked a significant moment in Australia's post-war history. The nation was emerging from the economic constraints of World War II. Industries were being revitalized, and the mint resumed more consistent production after years of fluctuating output. During this period, coinage bearing the effigy of King George VI, a portrait created by British engraver Thomas Humphrey Paget, dominated Australian currency. The penny of this year continued to feature the familiar kangaroo reverse, designed by George Kruger Gray, symbolizing national pride and identity. The total mintage for the 1948 penny was approximately 134,000 pieces, a moderate figure compared to earlier decades, but still sufficient to make the coin a regular presence in circulation at the time. Hidden among this mintage, however, is the subtle Y-Dot variety, a minor die characteristic that has captured the attention of coin collectors and specialists due to its rarity and the value it commands in the modern numismatic marketplace. To identify this intriguing variety, you'll want to carefully inspect the reverse side of the coin, specifically focusing on the word penny positioned beneath the leaping kangaroo. The area of interest lies at the final letter, the Y in penny. On the Y-Dot variety, a small raised dot can be seen directly to the bottom right of the letter Y, a feature that distinguishes this coin from the regular issue. This tiny dot is not the result of post-mint damage or corrosion, but rather a genuine mint die feature, a product of the striking process itself. The origin of this dot is believed to stem from a subtle die flaw or modification that occurred during mint preparation, perhaps caused by a microscopic imperfection on the die's surface or by intentional retouching. At the mint, regardless of the precise cause, the result was a small but distinctive raised point of metal, which now serves as the diagnostic hallmark for this rare 1948 variety. Collectors and numismatists prize the Y-Dot penny for both its scarcity and its place within the broader family of dot varieties that appear sporadically across several years of Australian penny production. Each of these varieties, whether located near the Y, between designer initials, or under the date, contributes to the rich tapestry of Australian coinage history and offers a tangible connection to the craftsmanship and precision of mid-20th century minting. In terms of market valuation, the 1948 Y-Dot penny exhibits a striking spread depending on grade and overall condition. Lower grade examples, those that have endured the wear and tear of decades in circulation, can still hold respectable value, typically ranging from 10 to 20 Australian dollars on the lower end of the Sheldon scale. While these circulated coins may show smoothing of the details and diminished luster, the presence of the defining dot ensures that they retain collector appeal. However, the true value of this variety emerges in higher grades. Coins graded at mint state 60, MS60, displaying light surface marks and some original mint brightness, can command prices in the range of $350. Exceptional specimens achieving mint state 65, MS65, coins that showcase sharp strike definition, full mint luster, and virtually no contact marks, are known to sell for as much as $3,000. These upper-tier examples are particularly scarce, as few 1948 pennies were carefully preserved in mint condition due to their everyday, utilitarian role in post-war Australia. What makes this coin particularly compelling is the blend of subtlety and rarity. The dot itself is almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, Yet that minuscule feature has the power to elevate a coin's value exponentially. It is a testament to how nuanced and detailed the field of numismatics can be, where collectors and historians alike find fascination in the tiniest of design differences, each one a byproduct of human craftsmanship, machine precision, and historical circumstance. The 1948 King George VI E-dot penny thus occupies a special place in Australian coin, collecting a bridge between the wartime minting era of the early 1940s and the transitional years leading up to the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. Its modest mintage, combined with its subtle design anomaly and high collector demand, ensures its continued status as one of the standout rarities of the post-war penny series. For those fortunate enough to discover one in their collection, the 1948 E-dot penny represents far more than a small copper coin. It is a tangible artifact of Australia's minting legacy, a reminder of the attention to detail that defines the art of coinage, and a symbol of how history often hides in the smallest of details. Next up, at number 7 on our countdown of the most valuable Australian pennies of all time, we encounter a coin that stands as one of the crown jewels of mid-20th century Australian numismatics, the 1946 King George VI Australian penny. Unlike the subtle die varieties and minor design anomalies we've discussed in previous entries, this coin's rarity lies not in an obscure minting error or hidden feature, but in something far more fundamental: its astonishingly low mintage figure. The 1946 penny holds a unique place in Australian coinage history, representing one of the lowest regular issue mintages of the entire penny series. In that year, only 240,000 examples were struck, in a remarkably small number by any standard, especially when compared with the millions typically produced in surrounding years. This exceptionally limited production has made the 1946 penny a true rarity, one of those coins that collectors dream of finding tucked away in an old jar, a forgotten collection, or a family heirloom passed down through generations. The year 1946 was a period of transition and recovery for Australia. The Second World War had ended the previous year, and the nation was beginning to rebuild its economy, infrastructure, and international trade. The Royal Australian Mint and associated branch mints were still operating under conditions influenced by post-war austerity, metal shortages, and industrial readjustment. These circumstances contributed to fluctuations in coin production across multiple denominations. The low output of pennies during 1946 can be attributed to the abundance of coins already in circulation combined with limited minting capacity being redirected to other pressing needs of the time. The obverse of the 1946 penny bears the dignified portrait of King George VI, designed by Thomas Humphrey Paget, whose initials HP can be found just below the monarch's neck truncation. The reverse retains the iconic design created by George Kruger Gray, the dynamic image of a kangaroo leaping across the face of the coin, framed by the denomination 1 penny and the word Australia above, with the date below. This design, introduced in 1938, became an enduring symbol of the Australian pre-decimal era and remains one of the most recognizable motifs in the nation's numismatic legacy. Identifying a 1946 penny requires no special magnification or attention to minute details. The key lies simply in the date itself. If your coin clearly shows the year 1946 beneath the leaping kangaroo, you may be holding one of the rarest Australian pennies to have ever entered circulation. However, given its scarcity, finding one in any condition today is an extraordinary stroke of luck. In terms of value, the 1946 penny's desirability is directly tied to its scarcity and condition. Coins that have circulated heavily and show moderate to severe wear, perhaps with much of the luster gone and surface details smoothed, can still command impressive prices due to sheer rarity. Even well-worn examples typically sell in the range of 50 to 100 Australian dollars, reflecting the persistent demand from collectors who are eager to fill the 1946 slot in their pre-decimal penny collections. As the grade improves, so too does the value, often dramatically. Coins preserved in mint state 60 MS60 condition, showing only light marks and full design definition, have been known to sell for approximately $1,000. At the upper end of the grading spectrum, superb specimens achieving mint state 65, MS65, those with exceptional luster minimal, contact marks, and near-perfect strikes can reach astonishing figures of $5,800 or more, depending on market trends and auction demand. Such coins are exceedingly scarce, as very few 1946 pennies were saved in pristine condition at the time of issue. The combination of low mintage and historical timing has made the 1946 penny a legendary piece among Australian coin enthusiasts. Its scarcity ensures that it remains one of the essential keys in completing a comprehensive pre-decimal penny collection. For many collectors, the hunt for this elusive date becomes a long-term goal, with some willing to pay significant premiums just to secure an example, even in lower grades, to fill that frustrating gap in their album or display case. What further enhances the 1946 penny's allure is its straightforward simplicity. There are no special varieties to identify, no hidden marks or dots to distinguish. Its rarity is universally recognized, and its value is driven purely by numbers, or rather by the lack thereof. Only 250,000 were ever minted, and fewer still have survived the passage of nearly 8 decades in collectible condition. Many were lost to time, melted or discarded as the nation transitioned to decimal currency 2 decades later in 1966. Owning a 1946 penny, therefore, is not just a matter of completing a collection. It is a tangible link to a significant period in Australia's post-war recovery and a testament to how even the simplest coins can carry profound historical and economic significance. It serves as a reminder that rarity does not always require complexity. Sometimes, the mere fact that so few were made is enough to elevate an ordinary copper coin into an object of national fascination and enduring value. For those fortunate enough to discover one, the 1946 King George VI penny is more than just a collectible. It is a piece of history, a survivor from a moment when Australia was reshaping itself after years of conflict, and a reflection of the careful precision and artistry that defined its coinage. Whether found in a humble old tin or acquired at a major numismatic auction, this coin represents one of the finest examples of rarity through scarcity in Australian currency, and it continues to captivate collectors with its quiet, understated significance. Next up, at number 6 on our list of the most valuable Australian pennies of all time, we arrive at a coin that holds a near-mythical reputation among collectors and a specimen that combines both a rare obverse pairing and an elusive die variety to create one of the most sought-after pieces in the entire pre-decimal series. This is the 1931 King George V Australian penny, distinguished by the Indian obverse and the dropped 1 variety. Together, these features elevate this coin from an ordinary issue into an object of extraordinary rarity and historical intrigue. The year 1931 was a turbulent one in Australia's history. The nation was in the depths of the Great Depression, an economic catastrophe that reverberated across the Commonwealth. Unemployment soared, production declined, and even the Royal Australian Mint scaled back operations in response to the economic downturn. As a result, coin production in 1931 was notably limited, a circumstance that would later contribute to the scarcity of this particular penny. Now, what makes the 1931 penny especially fascinating is that it was produced using 2 distinct obverse dies, one of British origin and another of Indian origin. The difference between these dies lies in subtle but measurable design, characteristics that were never intended to create collectible variations but have since become legendary in the numismatic world. To identify whether your 1931 penny features the Indian obverse, you'll need to turn the coin over to the side, bearing the portrait of King George V. Carefully observe the border of small raised dots, known as beads, that circle the coin along the inner rim. The Indian obverse variety can be confirmed by counting or comparing the bead spacing. The Indian obverse displays 178 beads, while the more common London obverse displays only 177 beads. Although this difference may seem minute, it is a crucial diagnostic feature. Additionally, on the Indian obverse, the N in the inscription Owen, part of the Latin phrase Owen, Rex FD Ind, EMP, points directly between two beads, aligning perfectly, another telltale sign of the Indian die. Once you've confirmed that your 1931 penny bears the Indian obverse, you'll want to flip the coin to its reverse side, the kangaroo, design, to check for the dropped 1 variety. In this variety, the numeral 1 in the date, 1931, is noticeably lower than the other digits, as though it hangs or droops slightly below the baseline of the C9, 3, and final 1. This subtle misalignment was caused by an anomaly in the date punching process during die preparation, and while it may appear to be a minor imperfection, it is precisely this irregularity that distinguishes the dropped 1 from standard issues. The Indian obverse combined with the dropped 1 represents one of the most coveted double varieties in the Australian penny series. Both features must appear together to qualify as the true rarity. Collector's prize, a combination that occurred only in a small fraction of the already limited 1931 mintage, given that total production for the year was never exceptionally high to begin with, and factoring in nearly a century of circulation, attrition, and loss. Surviving examples in collectible condition are exceedingly few. In terms of valuation, the 1931 Indian obverse dropped 1 penny commands significant premiums across all grades, even coins in heavily worn, low-grade condition. Those with softened detail, edge wear, and diminished luster can still fetch several hundred Australian dollars, depending on eye appeal and the clarity of the identifying features. The rarity alone ensures that demand remains consistently strong among collectors, regardless of condition. When you move into higher grades, the coin's market value climbs steeply. Well-preserved specimens graded around extremely fine EF40 can easily reach prices of approximately $7,500, reflecting the combination of scarcity, historical importance, and collector demand. Examples that approach the about uncirculated AU or mint state range are virtually unknown in the marketplace and, if offered at public auction, could command staggering sums well beyond typical catalog estimates. The beauty of this coin lies not only in its monetary value but also in what it represents, a snapshot of Australia's minting operations during one of the most challenging economic eras in modern history. It reflects the practical realities of coin production in a time of scarcity, when dies were shared and reused across the British Empire, resulting in hybrid combinations like the Indian obverse appearing on Australian strikes. These subtle differences, invisible to the general public at the time, have since become the cornerstone of Australian penny collecting, turning what were once mundane circulating coins into prized artifacts of minting heritage. Collectors who have handled or studied the 1931 Indian obverse dropped 1 penny often describe it as a coin that truly embodies the thrill of numismatic discovery. It's a coin that rewards attention to detail, one that invites the collector to look more closely, to measure, to compare, and to appreciate the craftsmanship and historical coincidences that shaped its creation. To find one even in modest condition is to hold in your hand a rare witness to both economic hardship and minting precision. Because of its combination of distinct features and extremely low survival rate, the 1931 Indian obverse dropped 1 penny has earned an enduring place among Australia's legendary rarities. It continues to capture the imagination of seasoned numismatists and casual collectors alike, representing the pinnacle of detail-oriented collecting and the enduring allure of discovering something truly exceptional in the smallest corners of history. For those fortunate enough to encounter one, it is not merely a coin, it is a testament to a bygone era, a masterpiece of unintentional rarity, and a symbol of how precision, circumstance, and chance can combine to create one of the greatest treasures in Australian coinage. Next up, At number 5 on our countdown of the most valuable Australian pennies ever produced, we turn our attention to one of the most legendary coins in Australia's numismatic history, the 1920 King George V Australian penny, specifically the dot above top scroll variety. This coin stands at the intersection of rarity, history, and intrigue, embodying the fascination that collectors have long held for subtle minting differences that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. The 1920 penny occupies a pivotal place in Australian numismatics. By this time, Australia had been striking its own coinage for nearly a decade, with the first pennies issued in 1911. The design, created by Edgar Bertram, McKennell for the obverse and W.H.J. Blakemore for the reverse, had become an enduring symbol of the young nation's currency system. However, 1920 was a year of transition and experimentation for the Royal Mint's branch in Melbourne, and the production of the penny that year resulted in several distinct varieties, each with subtle but meaningful differences that have fascinated collectors for generations. The total recorded mintage for the 20
Australian penny was approximately
9,040,000 pieces, not an especially small number, compared to some of the rarer years in the series. However, within this mintage lies a series of remarkable die varieties, including coins featuring dots and various positions relative to the scroll designs on the reverse side. Among these, the most famous and valuable of all is the dot above top scroll variety, a coin that has become the stuff of legend in Australian coin collecting circles. To properly identify this variety, one must first understand what is meant by the term scroll. On the reverse of the Australian penny, the word 1 appears prominently below the word penny, above and below. The word 1 are two decorative curved elements that resemble small crowns or ornamental flourishes. These are referred to as scrolls. For the 1920 penny, the position of a small raised dot in relation to these scrolls determines which variety you're examining. To locate the dot above top scroll variety, turn your coin to the reverse, the side displaying the words Commonwealth of Australia 1 penny. Focus your attention on the upper scroll, which is positioned directly above the word 1. In the correct variety, a small distinct dot can be seen centered directly above the top scroll, resting between the curved ends of the ornamentation and just below the inner circular beading of the coin's border. This dot is not an accidental mark or a post-mint blemish. It is an intentional feature created during the minting process when different master dies were being tested and prepared. The reason for these varieties stems from the transition between minting facilities and design hubs during the early years of Australian coin production. In 1920, the Melbourne Mint used several different dies and configurations, some supplied by London and others locally produced, resulting in the presence of coins with dots in varying positions and below the bottom scroll, above the bottom scroll, or above the top scroll. Of these, the dot above top scroll is by far the rarest and most valuable, with only a tiny fraction of the total mintage believed to display this configuration. Because of this extreme scarcity, the 1920 dot above top scroll penny commands enormous respect and value among collectors. Even lower grade examples, heavily circulated coins showing considerable wear, are worth significant sums simply due to their rarity. However, it is in higher grades that this coin truly astonishes. A specimen graded Mint State 60, MS 60, showing original luster, sharp detail, and minimal marks, can achieve prices in the vicinity of $8,700, reflecting its status as one of the key dates in the Australian penny series. Coins that reach Mint State 65, MS 65 or above, with brilliant mint luster, crisp strike quality, and exceptional eye appeal, are among the most desirable Australian copper coins ever struck. At this level, valuations can soar dramatically, reaching $50,000 or more, depending on market demand and the coin's provenance. In rare cases, coins certified at the MS67 level have achieved extraordinary sums at major numismatic auctions, firmly establishing the 1920 Dot above, top scroll penny as a true blue-chip rarity. What makes this coin so captivating is the combination of historical significance, visual subtlety, and sheer scarcity. The dot itself, a tiny raised speck of metal, might easily go unnoticed by the untrained eye. Yet for the seasoned collector, that small detail represents one of the most important markers in Australian coinage, a product of early mint experimentation, and a tangible reminder of the challenges faced by the nation's mints in the years following World War I. It is also worth noting that the 1920 penny series serves as an essential study in Australian die varieties. The presence or absence of dots, as well as their exact placement, helps trace the lineage of the dies used, their origin, and their modifications over time. As such, owning a 1920 dot above top scroll penny is not just about possessing a rare and valuable coin. It is about holding a piece of minting history that tells a story of innovation, trial, and the early evolution of Australia's independent coinage. Collectors who specialize in Australian pre-decimal coins often consider the 920 dot above top scroll penny one of the holy grails of the series, a coin that elevates a collection from ordinary to elite. Its rarity ensures fierce competition whenever an example appears on the market, with collectors and investors alike drawn to its undeniable combination of beauty, history, and value. To discover one of these coins in the wild would be an almost miraculous find. For most, it is a coin admired from afar, a coveted addition to wish lists and reference books, and a symbol of the enduring allure of Australian numismatics. The 1920 dot above top scroll penny stands as a testament to the extraordinary. Stories that can lie hidden within seemingly small design in details, and a reminder that in the world of coins, history often reveals itself in the tiniest of marks. Next up, at number 4 on our countdown of the most valuable Australian pennies of all time, we once again find ourselves revisiting the year 1920, a remarkable and pivotal year in Australia's minting history. This time we turn our focus to the 1920 King George V Australian penny, featuring the double dot variety, a coin so rare and so steeped in intrigue that it has achieved legendary status among collectors and historians alike. While 1920 saw several distinct penny varieties, none captured the imagination quite like the double dot, a variety that stands as both a technical mystery and a numismatic masterpiece. As mentioned previously, the overall mintage for the 1920 penny was approximately 9,041,000 coins, but this figure represents all types combined, including the standard issue and several dot position varieties. Within this total lies an exceptionally small subset that displays the double dot configuration, making it one of the scarcest regular issue pennies ever produced for circulation in Australia. To fully appreciate the rarity of the double dot penny, it's important to understand the unique circumstances of Australian coin production during this period. The year 1920 was one of transition and experimentation at the Melbourne Mint. Australia had been producing its own coinage for less than a decade, and the Mint was still refining its dies and mastering the technical processes inherited from the Royal Mint in London. These early experiments often led to subtle design variations, some intentional, others purely accidental, and it is from this complex production environment that the double dot variety was born. Now, to identify this extraordinary coin, you will need to carefully examine the reverse side, the face bearing the words Commonwealth of Australia, 1 penny. As with other 1920 varieties, the defining features are the scrolls, the small ornamental flourishes located directly above and below the word 1. On most pennies, these scrolls appear clean and unadorned. However, on the double dot variety, there is a distinct raised dot above the top scroll and another raised dot below the bottom scroll, hence the name double dot. The dots themselves are subtle, perfectly circular impressions formed during the minting process, believed to have been the result of experimental die markings or positional reference points used by engravers or die polishers. Some researchers suggest that these dots may have been intentionally added during die preparation, as part of a testing phase for design, alignment, or spacing, while others theorize that they were the product of accidental die punches that went unnoticed during the production run. Whatever their origin, the result is a coin that stands apart as one of the most enigmatic and visually intriguing varieties ever struck in Australia's pre-decimal era. Because these dots are minute and can be easily overlooked or mistaken for random blemishes, collectors are advised to inspect their coins under good lighting and magnification. On a genuine 1920 double dot penny, the upper dot appears centered above the top scroll, sitting neatly between the curved ends of the flourish, while the lower dot is located just beneath the bottom scroll, again centered and clearly raised above the coin's field. Both must be present to confirm the double dot variety. A single dot indicates one of the other known varieties, such as the dot above top scroll or dot below bottom scroll. In the marketplace, the 1920 double dot penny ranks among the most coveted of all Australian pre-decimal coins, not only for its rarity, but also for its enduring mystery and the prestige it confers upon any collection fortunate enough to include one. Values for this coin are truly staggering, even when compared to other key dates. A well-preserved example graded at Mint State 60 MS60 can command prices around $3,500, making it an exceptional find in even modest condition. However, as condition improves, the value of this coin increases exponentially. High-grade specimens certified at Mint State 64 MS64, displaying full original luster, sharp strike definition, and virtually flawless surfaces, have achieved prices exceeding $112,000 at major auctions. This breathtaking valuation places the 1920 double dot penny among the most valuable copper coins ever produced in Australia, rivaling the legendary rarities of the series, such as the 30 penny in terms of collector prestige. It's worth noting that if a specimen were ever to surface in an even higher grade, MS65 or above, it could easily surpass these already astonishing figures. Coins of this caliber are not merely numismatic collectibles, they are investment-grade historical artifacts, often changing hands through private sales or high-profile auction houses where competition among serious collectors is fierce. Even in lower grades, this coin commands significant respect. Circulated examples showing moderate wear but retaining identifiable dots can still sell for several $100s. The fact that such heavily used examples maintain high market value underscores just how rare this variety truly is. Many collectors spend years, even decades, searching for one, often examining countless 120 pennies in hopes of spotting those two elusive dots that mark a genuine discovery. Beyond its financial value, the 1920 double dot penny tells a deeper story about the evolution of Australia's minting practices and the unpredictable nature of coin production. In the early 20th century, it represents a moment in time when the nation's coinage was still finding its identity, a blend of British tradition and emerging Australian independence. Each small variation, each dot or misplaced mark, reflects the hands of engravers and machinists working with limited tools and immense precision, unaware that their small imperfections would one day become treasures of immense historical and monetary worth. The double dot penny has since become a cornerstone of serious Australian penny collections. It is a coin that bridges the technical and the artistic, combining tangible rarity with a subtle design feature that rewards careful observation. For collectors, owning one is not only a symbol of achievement, but also a connection to the very roots of Australian coinage, a tangible piece of the story that transformed everyday currency into objects of enduring fascination. Whether discovered in a forgotten family collection, acquired through years of diligent searching, or purchased at a major numismatic event, the 1920 King George V double dot penny stands as one of the defining rarities of Australian numismatics. Its modest size belies its significance, and its twin dots, so small yet so powerful, remind us that the most extraordinary stories in history are often written in the finest of details. Next up, At number 3 on our list of the most valuable Australian pennies of all time, we have a true cornerstone of Australian numismatics, the 1925 King George V Australian penny. This coin is one of the great classics of the pre-decimal era, revered not for an obscure variety or minting anomaly, but simply for its extraordinarily low mintage and the immense demand it has held among collectors for nearly a century. The 1925 penny represents the height of rarity among standard issue Australian coins, a piece whose scarcity was born out of economic circumstance rather than design experimentation. While many of the other valuable pennies in this list owe their worth to specific minting variations such as dots, verse differences, or misplaced numerals, the 1925 penny's fame comes purely from the fact that so few were ever struck. In the first place, to put things into perspective, the official mintage figure for the 1925 Australian penny was only 117,000 pieces, making it one of the lowest mintage coins ever released for general circulation in the entire pre-decimal series. This figure stands in stark contrast to the millions of pennies typically produced in surrounding years. For example, in 1922 and 1924, the Royal Mint in Melbourne struck pennies in the multi-millions. But for reasons that remain partly speculative, 1925 saw production plummet to a fraction of the norm. The primary reason for this exceptionally small output appears to be linked to Australia's economic recovery following World War I and the government's decision to limit copper coin production due to decreased demand for small denomination currency. Many coins from previous years were still in circulation and in good condition, reducing the necessity for additional minting. Consequently, the Melbourne Mint struck only what was needed to replace the most heavily worn pieces, leading to that tiny mintage figure of just over 100,000. Visually, the 1925 penny follows the familiar design established for the Australian penny series since its introduction in 1911. The obverse features the left-facing effigy of King George V, designed by Sir Edgar Bertram McKennell, a portrait that had become iconic throughout the British Commonwealth. The inscription around the bust reads, Jorgavsvag DG Brit, Omen Rexefti Ind Impi, translating to George V, by the grace of God, King of all the Britons, Defender of the Faith, Emperor of India. On the reverse, designed by W. H. J. Blakemore, the layout is clean and balanced. The words, 1 penny, appear prominently in the center, encircled by the legend Commonwealth of Australia and the year of issue, 1925 below. This design is simple yet powerful, embodying the no-nonsense aesthetic of early 20th century coinage. It was never intended to be rare or special, but time, circumstance, and scarcity have transformed it into one of the most sought-after Australian coins in existence. Because there are no known varieties, mint errors, or distinctive features to look for, identifying a 1925 penny is straightforward. The date 1925 at the bottom of the reverse tells you everything you need to know. But finding one, especially in high grade, is an entirely different challenge. Most of the 1 to 17,000 pennies struck that year entered circulation and saw decades of heavy use, wearing down their surfaces until the finer details were all but erased. The vast majority of surviving examples today are in well-circulated condition, often with significant flattening of the king's portrait, smoothing of the inner beading, and a general brown patina indicative of long service in commerce. For this reason, uncirculated or near uncirculated specimens are exceedingly rare and command exceptional premiums whenever they appear on the market. In terms of value, the 1925 King George V penny demonstrates one of the most dramatic price gradients in Australian coinage. Even heavily worn examples in the lowest grades, coins that may have circulated for decades and lost much of their original detail, can still fetch between $500 and $1,000, depending on eye appeal and demand at the time of sale. For collectors seeking to fill the 1925 slot in their penny date set, even a well-worn coin is considered a prized acquisition. As condition improves, however, The value of the 1925 penny increases exponentially. Coins in mint state 60, MS60, showing strong original color, minimal marks, and partial luster, are typically valued around 4,600. From there, the price climbs sharply as each incremental improvement in grade becomes rarer. High-end examples certified at mint state, with crisp strike definition, full original mint red or red-brown luster, and immaculate fields can command astonishing sums of up to $27,000, and sometimes even more in exceptional circumstances. It's easy to understand why this coin carries such a substantial premium. With a mintage of only 117,000, it rivals some of the rarest issues in Australian history. When you consider that millions of pennies were typically struck each year, the 1925 issue stands out as an incredible anomaly. A year when the mint, for a combination of economic and logistical reasons, produced a fraction of its usual output. Adding to its mystique is the fact that many surviving specimens were lost to the ravages of time, melted down, corroded, or simply misplaced over generations. The number of genuine, collectible examples in existence today is likely only a small portion of that original 117,000. For the numismatist, the 1925 penny represents purity of rarity, a coin whose value is driven entirely by its scarcity and historical context, rather than by an error or variation. It is the kind of coin that tells a broader economic story, one of post-war recovery, cautious production, and the everyday life of Australians in the interwar years. Holding a 1925 penny is to hold a tangible artifact of that period, a reminder of how even the most ordinary object, a simple copper coin, can become extraordinary through the passage of time. In the world of Australian coin collecting, the 1925 penny is often viewed as a rite of passage. For many, it represents the first truly rare date they aspire to acquire, a coin that marks the transition from casual collecting to serious numismatics. Its blend of historical significance, rarity, and aesthetic simplicity makes it one of the most enduring symbols of the Australian pre-decimal era. So while it may appear at first glance to be just another penny, the 1925 King George V penny is anything but ordinary. It stands as a silent testament to the unpredictable nature of minting history, a copper relic of economic restraint and enduring fascination, whether displayed proudly in a collection, passed down as a family heirloom, or auctioned to eager bidders. The 1925 penny continues to captivate collectors nearly a century after it first left the presses of the Melbourne Mint, a small coin with a legacy far greater than its humble face value could ever suggest. Next up, at number 2 on our list of the most valuable Australian pennies ever struck, we once again return to the fascinating year of 1920, a year that continues to dominate the upper ranks of Australian numismatic history. But unlike the other varieties we've covered so far, those defined by distinctive minting marks or die dots, this one is special for an entirely different reason. This is the 1920 King George V no dot Australian penny, a coin that, at first glance, may appear perfectly ordinary, yet is in reality one of the most elusive and highly prized issues ever produced by the Melbourne Mint. The 1920 penny is a study in complexity. In that single year, the Melbourne Mint produced an array of varieties that included multiple dot configurations, dots above the top scroll, below the bottom scroll, and even the incredibly rare double dot version, which features both. These subtle marks, introduced either intentionally as die identification devices or accidentally through the minting process, have fascinated collectors for generations. Yet among this family of varieties there exists one that defies the pattern. Entirely a penny without any dots at all. To identify the no-dot variety, you'll need to examine the reverse of the coin, the side inscribed with Commonwealth of Australia, encircling the bold words, 1 penny, with the year 1920 positioned at the bottom. On most 1920 pennies, a small raised dot can be found either above the top scroll, below the bottom scroll, or in both positions in the case of the double dot. Whilst these dots are minute, barely a millimeter in diameter, but their presence or absence dramatically affects the coin's classification and, consequently, its value. On the no-dot variety, however, neither of these dots appears anywhere on the reverse. The space above the upper scroll and below the lower scroll is entirely clear, with smooth, uninterrupted fields. This absence is not due to wear, corrosion, or post-mint damage. It's a product of the die itself. A coin struck from dies that never carried these tiny identifying marks in the first place. The exact reason why some 1920 pennies were struck without dots remains a matter of scholarly debate among numismatists. The prevailing theory is that the no-dot dies were part of an early production batch before the mint introduced the dot markers to distinguish between dies from different mints or engraving hubs. It's also possible that the no-dot coins were struck during a transitional phase, using leftover or modified dies from previous years that lacked these distinguishing features. Regardless of the cause, the result was a small number of 1920 pennies that bore no dots at all, a detail so seemingly insignificant that it went unnoticed by the general public for decades. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that collectors began to realize just how rare these no-dot 1920 pennies truly were. By then, most had long since circulated heavily or been lost to the natural attrition of time. The few survivors that remained in collectible condition quickly gained legendary status within the numismatic community. Today, the 1920 no-dot penny stands as one of the cornerstone rarities in Australian pre-decimal coinage, often referred to as the phantom variety because of how rarely it appears on the open market. The overall mintage figure for all 1920 pennies combined across all varieties was around 9,041,000 coins. But within that total, only a tiny fraction represent the true no-dot type. The number of surviving examples in high grades is vanishingly small, with most known specimens showing clear signs of circulation. Because of this, even moderately worn examples are considered exceptional finds and can command substantial premiums. In terms of value, the 1920 no-dot penny is truly remarkable. A specimen in mint state 60 MS60, showing traces of its original mint luster, crisp details, and only minor contact marks, can easily achieve prices of around $500-300, reflecting its position as one of the key rarities of the series. As the grade improves, so does the coin's value, exponentially. In mint state 65 MS65 condition, with superb luster, sharp strike definition, and minimal surface flaws, this coin can command $40,000 or more, depending on eye appeal, provenance, and market conditions. Even coins on the lower end of the grading spectrum, with noticeable wear or discoloration, remain highly desirable. A heavily circulated 1920 no-dot penny might still bring a few hundred to over $1,000, depending on overall condition and collector demand at the time. This enduring value, even in imperfect examples, speaks volumes about the coin's rarity and historical importance. What makes the no-dot penny particularly fascinating from a numismatic perspective is its visual simplicity. Unlike its siblings with dots, which immediately catch the eye under magnification, the no-dot variety's defining feature is the complete absence of any such marks. It's a coin that invites careful examination, rewarding the observant collector who knows precisely what to look for. There is a quiet elegance to its plainness, an understated distinction that separates it from all others of its kind. Historically, the 1920 no-dot penny occupies a special place in the evolution of Australian coinage. It encapsulates the experimentation, inconsistency, and logistical challenges faced by the Melbourne Mint in the early years of national coin production. The presence of multiple varieties in a single year highlights the trial and error approach that characterized the minting process during that period, as Australia gradually refined its systems and began to assert its own identity in the world of coinage. The no-dot penny serves as a tangible reminder of this formative stage, a link between the early experiments of the 1910s and the more standardized issues that would follow in the decades ahead. It's also a symbol of how seemingly minor Differences in minting can create vast differences in historical and monetary value. Collectors who manage to acquire a genuine 1920 no-dot penny join an elite circle within Australian numismatics. It is one of those coins that instantly elevates a collection from ordinary to exceptional. Owning one is not just a mark of numismatic achievement, but also a connection to a moment in history when a tiny omission, the absence of two simple dots, produced one of the most coveted copper coins in the Southern Hemisphere. In auctions, these coins attract intense competition, with bidders vying for the chance to own a piece of Australian minting lore. Each time a well-preserved specimen surfaces, it makes headlines in the numismatic world, reigniting the fascination and excitement that have surrounded this coin for generations. The 1920 King George V no-dot penny is, in many ways, a paradox. A coin defined by what it lacks, yet valued precisely because of that absence. Its beauty lies not in an elaborate design or an ornate variation, but in the purity of its simplicity. It stands as a quiet but powerful testament to the idea that, in the world of coins, sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are those that conceal their rarity in plain sight. Next up, at number 1 on our list, standing proudly as the most rare and valuable Australian penny ever produced, we arrive at the legendary 1930 King George V Australian penny, specifically the Indian obverse variety. This coin is not just a numismatic rarity, it is a national treasure, a symbol of Australian coinage history, and perhaps the most famous and sought-after copper coin ever struck in the Southern Hemisphere. The story of the 1930 penny is one of mystery, circumstance, and sheer improbability. A story that begins in an era defined by economic hardship and ends with one of the most remarkable discoveries in the world of collecting. The year 1929 was a turbulent one for Australia. The effects of the Great Depression had begun to take hold, and economic uncertainty swept across the nation. Businesses closed, unemployment soared, and the government faced increasing financial pressure. In this climate of austerity, the Royal Australian Mint had little reason to produce large quantities of low-denomination coins. The existing stock of pennies from previous years was more than sufficient to meet circulation needs, and as a result, no official order was issued for the minting of pennies dated 1930. And yet, despite the absence of any official directive, the Melbourne Mint went ahead and crafted dies for the 1930 penny, striking a tiny experimental batch, likely around 3,000 coins, intended for circulation, along with an estimated 6 coins struck in proof finish. These proof examples were not meant for public release, but were likely created for testing purposes or as presentation pieces, part of a quiet effort to refine the Mint's production techniques and improve the quality of Australian coinage heading into the new decade. This unusual decision to proceed without authorization gave birth to what would become Australia's most iconic rarity, the 1930 penny. The coin was never publicly announced, never listed in official mint reports, and never intended for general distribution. Yet somehow a small number of these coins entered circulation, mixed inconspicuously among the regular 1929 pennies of the time. It was only years later that their existence came to light, sparking one of the greatest discoveries in Australian numismatic history. What makes this coin particularly fascinating is that 2 obverse dies were used during its production, one known as the English obverse and the other as the Indian obverse. The Indian obverse is distinguished by its subtle but telltale characteristics. To identify it, you must examine the obverse, the side bearing the portrait of King George V. On the Indian obverse, there are 178 beads around the inner rim, as opposed to the 7 beads found on the English version, and the Shannon and Owen within the legend points directly to a bead rather than to a gap between beads. These small design details serve as the key diagnostic features for determining whether your coin bears the Indian obverse, a variety that, in the case of the 1930 penny, holds immense historical and monetary importance. The reverse of the coin, designed by W.H.J. Blakemore, follows the same layout as all Australian pennies of the period. The words Commonwealth of Australia. Encircling the central inscription, 1 penny, with the date 1930 positioned below. The design is simple yet elegant, its aesthetic rooted in the Edwardian style that characterized early Commonwealth coinage. But it is the date, those 4 digits, 193, that have since taken on an almost mythical quality among collectors. Because so few of these coins were ever produced, and because they circulated quietly without public notice, most of the original 1930 pennies saw significant wear before anyone realized their significance. Many were lost, melted, or destroyed, leaving behind only a tiny handful of surviving examples. Of the few thousand believed to have been struck, experts estimate that no more than 1/500 to 2,000 genuine pieces exist today in any condition, and of those, only a small fraction remain in high grades. The 6 proof strikes are among the rarest and most valuable Australian coins ever created, held almost exclusively in museums or major institutional collections. The value of the 1930 King George V Indian obverse penny is nothing short of astounding. A well-preserved Mint State 60, MS-60, example, displaying clear detail, modest luster, and minimal surface marks, is valued at approximately $148,000, an extraordinary sum for a coin that once had a face value of just 1 penny. For coins in Mint State 65, MS-65 condition, the value skyrockets even higher, reaching as much as $389,000, and in certain auction settings, examples with exceptional eye appeal have exceeded these figures. Even circulated examples, coins that have passed through countless hands and show considerable wear, can fetch tens of thousands of dollars, depending on condition and authenticity. However, with fame comes imitation, and it is important to note that the 1930 penny is among the most counterfeited Australian coins in existence. Fake examples, often produced in recent decades, can be found on online marketplaces such as AliExpress and eBay, where they are sometimes passed off as genuine to unsuspecting buyers. Many of these counterfeits are crude replicas, lacking the correct die markers, letter spacing, or bead alignment. Still, some are sophisticated enough to fool the untrained eye. For that reason, authentication is absolutely essential if you believe you've discovered a 1930 penny. Any potential find should be evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service, such as PCGS or NGC, or by a trusted Australian numismatic authority. Genuine 1930 pennies exhibit specific diagnostic traits, including distinctive die flaws and striking characteristics that can confirm their authenticity beyond doubt. Having your coin professionally authenticated and graded not only protects you from fraud, but also establishes its true market value should you ever choose to sell or insure it. The story of the 1930 penny extends far beyond its monetary worth. It is, at its core, a story about chance, about how a handful of experimental coins, produced without fanfare during a period of economic despair, survived to become priceless artifacts of Australia's cultural and monetary heritage. Today, the 1930 penny occupies a place in Australian folklore. It represents the dream of discovery, the hope that an ordinary person might stumble upon something truly extraordinary, perhaps tucked away in an old box of change, a relative's drawer, or a forgotten coin jar. For collectors, the 1930 penny is the holy grail, the ultimate prize in Australian numismatics. Its combination of rarity, historical intrigue, and sheer mystique ensures its place at the top of every collector's list. Owning one is not merely a matter of possession. It is an achievement, a moment of connection to one of the most fascinating episodes in the history of Australian minting. So there you have it, the #1 most rare and valuable Australian penny of all time, the 1930 King George V Indian obverse penny. A coin born of experimentation, shaped by history, and elevated to legend by time. And with that, we conclude our journey through the top 10 most valuable Australian pennies. Each of these coins, from the humble 1947 Dot variety to the majestic 1930 Indian obverse, tells a story of artistry, craftsmanship, and the unpredictable nature of minting history. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or a casual enthusiast, the beauty of coin collecting lies in the thrill of discovery. The idea that a small, unassuming piece of copper could hold a story worth thousands of dollars and decades of fascination. If you've enjoyed this exploration into Australia's rarest and most valuable pennies, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell notification so you never miss a new episode. And of course, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever come across any of the coins on this list? Do you think I missed a notable rarity that deserves a spot in the countdown? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you all so much for joining me here at the Coin Studio for this deep dive into the treasures of Australian coinage. Until next time, take care, keep hunting, and as always, happy collecting. Peace out and have a good one, everyone.